Is the United States military gobbling up all of the silver that is coming into the United States? Well, that is what one analyst suggests is happening, and there very well could be some truth to it. Let's talk about it as we explore. There has been a lot of folks that have been talking about tariffs with regards to gold and silver. The reality is we really don't know if silver or gold themselves are going to be tariffed, in other words, taxed. The thought is that most of the tariffs that are occurring will cover everything, will have a tariff on it, except for a few exceptions, and gold and silver were not mentioned as those exceptions. But it's not really been pinned down yet. Regardless, tariffs have been the excuse for a lot of the influx of gold and silver into the United States. And gold has been questioned. There is some huge buyer. Could it be J.P. Morgan? And could J.P. Morgan be the big buyer for silver as well? Well, quite possibly, in terms of that patriation of gold and silver into the United States. We really don't know. But a lot of the silver is going to the refiners. I've mentioned some of that before, Asahi and others. I think Metal Ore and a couple of other companies that do business here in the United States of America, they're taking in a lot of the silver. And a lot of that silver is going to be used in industry and for manufacturing, such as electronics and other things here in the United States. It makes sense to do that. But in some ways, it made sense to do that even before. But nonetheless, for fear of tariffs, that's one motive, and it's one theory as to what's happening. But Andy Schectman has done an interview and talks more about this. Now, Andy Schectman has been talking about the military applications of silver for quite some time now. He's pointing fingers at the military-industrial complex and major Western banks, according to an interview that he did with Liberty and Finance. His assertions, while controversial, shed light on the complex forces at play in the precious metal sector. His core argument revolves around the idea that the sustained suppression of silver prices is not driven solely by profit motives, but by a larger geopolitical agenda. He contends that the military-industrial complex, along with the powerful financial institutions, benefits from artificially low silver prices due to its crucial role in various industries, including defense and technology. I agree with that. Silver is needed in so many different areas. There's over 10,000 uses of silver out there. The major use that you and I like to think about with regards to silver benefits us directly because we can stack it as a store of wealth. That's where my friend Summit Metals comes into play. Summit Metals has very competitive prices on silver products, so I hope you will consider checking them out at summitmetals.com. Why put so much effort into holding down the price of silver is the question that needs to be asked, and then work backwards, is what Schectman has stated, emphasizing the need to look beyond surface-level explanations. It's not profit. There are many other things that they could do that would not be as risky as what they are doing. There's a bigger agenda with silver. And, and the thing is I have not necessarily bought into this idea of a massive cabal to suppress the price of silver. I just don't think it's possible. I think it is one factor in driving prices, but the natural market, I think, is much more powerful, and I've seen that, and I've covered it and discussed it even daily on this channel. But nonetheless, I do believe there is some suppression going on. The mere existence of the Federal Reserve, for instance, I think is one of the biggest suppressor of prices by propping up the dollar. Another is just the mere existence of all of the derivatives that are out there, with 350 plus paper versions to represent a 1 ounce of actual physical silver in the SLV and other derivatives markets with exchange-traded funds and products out there, I think is definitely a suppressive force. By the way, at the very beginning of that, it was a force that actually pumped up the price of silver. Now that is part of what has led to the climbing of the prices since 2006, that apex in 2011. Now, the plurality in demand is something else that he talks about with this, diverse applications. You have monetary demand, you have industrial demand, which is the greatest. And there's over 50% of the silver produced is used for industry. Yeah, and then you have military industrial complex demand, arguing that this plurality in demand makes silver a strategic asset that powerful entities seek to control. And he's right. But how much silver is used for military applications? That's a very controversial topic, and no one really knows. In fact, we do know how much silver is used in our electronics, especially considering that a lot of it is recycled, and recycling is happening more and more often because of the essentially a shortage of the silver that is needed based off of, or some groups like Metals Focus has done for the Silver Institute, and even the other agencies that are much more conservative in their approach in terms of that, are also admitting that there is a tightening supply for silver out there. Now, there is other aspects of the military involvement, that these actions are driven by a desire to maintain cheap access to silver for weapons manufacturing. But you know what? It seems like with regards to the military, money is not really an issue, it seems like. Although now with Doge, and there is more of a concerted effort to try to be more streamlined. But if it's really what you want, and you want to continue to make weaponry, you need silver. Now, he says cheap silver, but I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the major motivator. However, they just need silver, and they'll take it any way they can get it at this point. Sheckman pointed out that the accumulation of silver by countries like India, China, and Russia is evidence of the strategic importance. I agree with that. India, he would argue, does understand silver's value, and they've imported about 800 to 9 million ounces. And actually, I've covered that on this channel as well, and that is true, especially with gold prices being risen so high. India is accumulating it for their festivals and for their cultural demand. And China's acquisition of doré concentrate, and by the way, that's unrefined silver, which in some ways can throw off the statistics, I feel, and I've covered that on this channel as well. And so in Russia's addition of silver to its strategic stockpile is another thing that we should take note of. And these are all questions that they don't need to be answered, they need to be asked. Sheckman noted, urging viewers to consider the underlying motivations behind these actions. And Occam's razor says because it's a heck of a lot more important than the price would lend one to believe. Yep, there's a big shift happening. And could the United States be a part of that with our military taking part of that pie of silver that has come into the United States? I think it's quite possible. So he is arguing that the manipulation is not solely for financial gain, but to serve the interest of the military-industrial complex as a whole, not just here in the United States, but around the world. But I think in the U.S., there is something to be said about this specifically because of the amount of silver that is coming in. It is a major shift to the point where we very well could see a breaking of the LBMA stockpile with its record low of silver holdings there to the tune of 770 million ounces, or actually 750 million ounces of silver. That's a record low, at least from the data that I'm able to assess from their website. So this is something that is very intriguing and a very interesting topic for sure, because it's open-ended. No one knows exactly how much silver is utilized by the military. But one thing we do know is that there's more silver that is utilized by the military now than ever before. Why can I say that with such confidence? Because everything is becoming more electronic. Everything is becoming more in line with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, with a sophisticated weapon system. Most of them involve electronics, computerized technology being utilized all throughout the military. There's no question that we're going to see more demand for silver with military applications than ever before, and that's not going to slow down. And in a sense, that is recession-proof. Question is how much do they need? I would make the argument that it may not be as much as some may guess or perceive. For instance, there was all this talk about 500 ounces of silver needed for each Tomahawk cruise missile. That number's been floating around for so long, and it's been pretty much to the point where you can do a Google search for it, and even the artificial intelligence Gemini application will say, yes, 500 ounces of silver. But in reality, there's been no evidence that I have seen that that's the case. More than likely, it's much less, much less. Although, make no mistake, there is silver needed for these missile technologies, and that silver that certainly in those weapons, that ordnance is launched and that bomb explodes, the silver is spread out on the ground, in the ground, and very far and wide, making it a little bit more difficult to mine and extract back out. Depending on how many bombs are dropped in a mine on a target, could it be worth mining that section to recover that silver? You never know. Down the road, that very well could be the case. And so these massive behemoth institutions have crossed the line from a corporate entity into becoming more government than anything else. And there is the case, especially with regards to BlackRock, which he thinks is going to have a growing influence in the precious metals market. And they're tying into some organizations. Is there a tie between BlackRock and things like A-Mark Precious Metals, for instance, which is a huge conglomerate which owns so many precious metal companies throughout the supply chain, and how much of that can be taken out and moved into military applications. So we'll see. Very interesting subject for sure here. That's what I like to do, is bring you the latest news and information in the world of precious metals. So if you enjoy what I do here, I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel and pressing that notifications bell, and press that like button as well. And it all helps the algorithm, and I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to watch this video, and want to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.